Welcome to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience. Hey, E-Commerce Marketing Podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen Robinson, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Andrew Maffettone, who is an e-commerce marketing expert with over 15 years in the industry. He's the founder of BlueTuskr, a full-service marketing company for e-commerce sellers, and the host of the E-Comm Show podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you having me on.
Excited, and we were just talking right before we started. You know, we've kind of did a podcast swap. I was first on your podcast, as I mentioned in the intro. The E-Comm Show podcast had a great time, and hopefully added value to your listeners. And looking for you to do the same with our listeners as well.
I just hope I can match what you did, man.
I'm sure you can. I think we're both kind of, I guess you could say. I don't want to say dinosaurs in this marketing industry, but we've been around the block for a little bit. So, we've seen a lot of changes, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely a very interesting time right now.
For sure. And, so today we're going to be talking about omnichannel marketing and really diversifying in off-channel marketplaces or off marketplaces. And you're really going to be kind of enlightening on all of that and, kind of diving deep. But, before we do get into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you got into what you're doing today at BlueTuskr?
Yeah. So I've been in e-commerce marketing specifically for a little over 15 years now. It was pretty much my first job. My father actually he had acquired a business that was not e-commerce. He took it on, put it online, had to make a whole custom site and everything because there was no Shopify or anything back then. My favorite thing to tell about that story is that he was one of the first companies to get offered to sell on Amazon that wasn't books. And he turned it down. And it's like my favorite thing to bring up at every family dinner. But since then, so I did end up kind of stayed into it a little bit. I got into a little bit on the retail side for a while there because obviously e-commerce wasn't as big back then. Started my own agency in college, exited that after like 5 or 6 years, then went in-house for a little while. Then started another agency, and then in late 2019, exited that with a partner of mine. We ended up selling to a public company that was doing all this stuff with it, and I was there for like 3 months, and I was like, no, I'm done. And so I got out of there, and then in early 2020, right before the pandemic, started BlueTuskr. And we are a full-service marketing company for e-commerce sellers. We're basically like an outsourced marketing department. So I kind of see us as like an agency of agencies because we've got a whole SEO team that just does SEO stuff and email and social and paid ads and all that fun stuff. So the reason I started it was before my last agency, when I was in-house, I was the only marketer. It was e-commerce sellers well into 8 figures. And I spent most of my time trying to get contractors and other agencies and all this stuff to just talk to each other, just work together. And it was driving me insane. And I was like, why isn't there just like one place where all of these agencies work and I have one sole person whose job is to manage all this stuff? And so our account managers, account strategists, whatever we call them, are basically like fractional CMOs. They oversee the rest of the team, and they kind of act as like a partner in the business and an extension of that team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, interesting story about turning down the opportunity to sell on Amazon. So I guess he would have been the kind of one of the first non-book stores there. Very, very interesting. Does he regret it to this day?
I love picking on him for that. Oh yeah. Yeah. He's got to. There's no way he doesn't. He says he's like, no, I like the decision. Like, no, you don't. You're exactly. A liar. No way.
Yeah, I hear you. Interesting. Well, great. As we mentioned, of course, when we talk about omni-channel marketing, and so where I want to start off, Andrew, is if you can kind of let us know a little bit about just a brief overview of what omni-channel marketing is and why it really is so crucial for e-commerce businesses today. So
I've come to find that there's several definitions of this, even though they all kind of have the same general feeling. So at a very broad level, omnichannel marketing is simply just making sure that your marketing is relevant no matter where your customer likes to shop. Retail, if they're at a gas station, or if they're at your own store, or if they're on Amazon, or if they're on Walmart, they're on Shopify, whatever. My way, because we are strictly on the digital side for the most part, we focus on an omni-channel strategy that is targeted towards wherever a seller is available. So whichever sales channels they have available. Most sellers, when you talk to them, they treat their Amazon business like one thing. They treat their Shopify business like one thing, their Walmart business like another. And because they keep them so separately, it also makes you split your audience. So you can't really manipulate your marketing into a direction of where you want it to go. So we work with sellers that are primarily on multiple sales channels, or they might be on one, but they're looking to diversify. And we help them develop strategies and execute those strategies to help them benefit wherever their business needs it at the time. So to give you an example, we work with what tends to be what we always tend to work with, which is someone who's on Amazon and someone who's on Shopify. Those are two pretty standard ones. So what happens a lot of times is we've definitely started to realize that CPCs on Amazon are getting out of hand, mainly because there's an obscene amount of competition. Amazon's making it easier to sell product, which means everyone and their mother is selling products, so it's hard to stand out and hold your ranking. Plus, everyone spends all this time nitpicking these tiny little things so that they can get that like 0.001% improvement on something, when all of that time could be better spent just diversifying. So we help them start to develop these strategies from an off Amazon perspective, whether we're leveraging Shopify or whether we're just leveraging their audience, and we basically direct that audience wherever we think is necessary. So the most common being, if you launch a new product on Amazon, you've got like a 30, 60-day like honeymoon window where they still kind of give you a tolerable ranking. But if you don't get enough sales, you don't get enough reviews, the thing starts to tank. So we actually will work with sellers of like, okay, what if we took your entire audience, found a way to segment them based on the ones that we know shop on Amazon, and send them directly to Amazon with some kind of like, hey, we've got a new product, doing some kind of campaign or promotion or something around it, getting that kind of traction going on the organic side, then pulling back and going back to their site, because usually that's where they're going to get their best margin anyway. And that way we can kind of focus on Amazon as like a customer acquisition channel and not so much something that we just solely rely on. So every business is different, every owner's different, every product line, every category, everything's completely different. So it doesn't always work the exact same way. Some sellers have the buy with Prime button on there now. Some sellers just do the available on Amazon button and let them just go. Others are like, no, I don't want to send them to Amazon at all. So like it always depends, because everyone's margins are different. But that's more or less in a long ranting way of how we see omnichannel, of basically just manipulating your audience to whichever sales channel you're available.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. That's really ultimately what it comes down to. Manipulating them and then trying to catch them, where they are on these different channels. And then that really brings up my next question. Of course, obviously businesses, kind of the main things that we're always talking about, we're always hearing, and you mentioned it, is the direct to consumer right on the website, whether, you're using Shopify to sell or other platform, or, you also may be selling on Amazon as well. So two different channels. Now, beyond that, the other distribution channels or the other methods of kind of reaching customers, how and what are some other key channels that you think e-commerce business really should consider implementing when they're thinking about this overall omni-channel marketing strategy? And how do the different channels really differ as far as like the types of customers that they can potentially reach?
This will venture a little bit into where I think the market's probably going to end up going. But right now, the obvious ones are you should have your own site. And because you have all the control on your site, you get to keep all the data. You can make your product look and sound how you want it to look. So you get all this extra benefit from it. You have the Amazon side, which is, I think they're like almost 60-something% of product searches online with, I think, Google, well, it might be a little less because Google's, I think, 46 last I looked. And so obviously Amazon's another big one. Very few brands shouldn't be on Amazon. There are some that I'm like, no, don't go. But usually they're on there. Then you have like the Walmart. I say don't sleep on Walmart. I think that Walmart is highly underutilized. Some sellers we work with, it's great. And other sellers, it's like, hey, you know what? It's better than nothing. And it's another place to have your product. And I always see Walmart as like, they're perpetually like 5 or 6 years behind Amazon. So 5 or 6 years from now, what if you're doing the same amount that you're doing on Amazon now? So it's kind of one of those like, yeah, it might not be as great as Amazon, but I wouldn't forget about it. Then you could get into eBay depending on the direction you're in, but then you get into the specialty stuff. So you have like the Chewies or the Wayfairs. So I think that we're going to start to see over time more and more of those types of marketplaces pop up. Like I'm sure Home Depot or Lowe's or like maybe Bass Pro Shop or something, like they're going to turn into these specialty, like I could totally see Bass Pro Shop just becoming like a everything fishing and hunting marketplace. So all these different little like siloed marketplaces are going to pop up, in which case it just becomes go wherever your customer is. And then that's where I think that they should be.
Exactly. Go where your customer is. Great. Examples there. And you mentioned, of course, Walmart, where, businesses don't want to sleep on it. I always mention that when I'm talking about other channels to, different e-commerce businesses that I'm dealing with. And yeah, it's, like you said, they may not be, of course, where Amazon is now, but at some point they're going to be, where Amazon kind of was. And so it's, they, believe it or not, like you said, they do have a pretty good market share. I mean, as far as like products, their distribution that they can, their reach actually is, is pretty good. Yeah, I actually happen to use Walmart for their grocery delivery actually here locally where I am, the suburb of Orlando, and been doing it for a good couple years now. And for what I need, I get everything that I need. The delivery is on point with that. The things that I can't get delivered, they'll show me if it can be shipped. Usually it's either this. They can do same day sometimes, and they can even do the next day as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a good chunk of America that uses Walmart solely and nothing else. And then there's the other chunk where it's like, it's right up the road, so why not? So I think that it's also a nice, the one thing that Walmart has that I'm still wondering like when they're going to start to really implement this that I know Amazon doesn't, is that they have the brick and mortar presence. So my belief is if you can actually do a good amount of sales on Walmart.com, they will find a way and they will hear about you, and then they'll be like, how do we get you in stores? And then it's a real nice stepping stone into getting into brick and mortar and getting into retail, whereas Amazon doesn't really have that. If you're on the food side, you have the CPG side, like maybe from like a Whole Foods side. I haven't heard of someone getting that, but it's possible. But with Walmart, they already have the presence, so
exactly,
why not?
Exactly. And Amazon, they're trying to. They've done different tests. You've probably seen those Amazon Prime stores. Yeah. I was in San Francisco last year, and they had one in downtown San Francisco. Just kind of went by, didn't actually go in. And it's an interesting concept. Their whole thing with that is, you don't use a credit card. Everything is tied to your Prime account. You just kind of add things to your card, and it just automatically gets charged to your to your Prime account, whatever, billing information or credit cards you have tied to that. So it's just not widespread. I mean, if you compare that to like Walmart.
Yeah, well, they had was it Amazon Books too? Yeah. That failed. They had Amazon, was it Amazon Fresh? I think. Didn't they have like their own store, their own grocery store for a little while there before they bought Whole Foods? So I see them keep trying.
Exactly. They're gonna keep trying. But yeah, as far as the footprint of an actual retail spot, I don't really see them getting to like a Walmart level or anything like that. As far as their footprint is concerned, I think their focus is on just the warehousing, the warehouse space. So they're able to fulfill what they can do as far as the same day, next day delivery and all of that. So I think that's kind of their bread and butter. Now, as far as these different omnichannel marketing strategies, these different platforms or rather channels that you can actually go to if you do, let's say, branch out, you do the Walmarts, you hook up with some of the other distribution channels. If you're trying anything like that, what are some of the main key, metrics that you should be paying attention to, to make sure, you're in the right place?
That's always an interesting question, right? Because it's going to be dependent on like where the business is at, what the business's goals are, maybe not necessarily like, because if I were to just be like, oh, you need an X ROAS and then you've nailed it. Like, congratulations, I answered your question. But like, no, like it's going to be more of like, where's the business at? You've got to understand that when you're going to a new sales channel, it's an investment in the beginning. You got to get it up and running. So it depends on where you're at the time. I'm a big fan of looking at everything holistically, right? So the reason I started kind of going in this approach, because I've actually been doing this whole omnichannel thing for like 6-7 years now. My last agency was also the same thing we're doing, because I actually sat down, I was watching my wife shop once, and she was, which is always fun, she was sitting on her, she was sitting on Instagram as usual. We go to a website, and if she saw that she saw the product was interesting and she liked it, she's like, oh, this is a really nice site, but they don't have a lot of reviews. She would leave the site and go to Amazon to see if they were available there. Now, she would usually just buy the product, and a lot of people will go to a website, and even if it has a ton of reviews, they'll still go to Amazon to go buy it. I've seen her do the opposite, where she'll actually find the product on Amazon. It'll have a ton of reviews, but possibly just from listening to me complain about it for years on end. She was like, no, I'm actually going to do some due diligence. So she would actually look and see, like, what's their social following like? What's like, if it's a new brand, she wanted to know before. So she's a very conscious shopper. And I started to realize, based on, I was like, I'm going to run some tests. And I started doing some stuff with some sellers we were working with at the time. And because everyone was so fluid, even if there was no button on the site, they would go to a site, then they'd go to Amazon. They'd go to Amazon, they'd go to a site, and it would be all over the place. Same thing with Walmart. I've seen it a couple times where we'd have like a Walmart button, and they would just go to Walmart. So when I started to realize that, I realized like, okay, it's not smart to look at your Amazon ads and not incorporate what other advertising you're doing, because there's so much bleed through. There's so much brand recognition happening off Amazon that I'm sure it's benefiting the Amazon side. So obviously you get people that are solely Amazon sellers for years and years and years. All they would do is they would look at their ACOS, and I'm like, no, I don't care about your ACOS. I want to know your tacos. And now it's finally become a little bit more mainstream of like, okay, yes, that's what we're focused on. Now I'm looking at, okay, if you're marketing everywhere, I want to know, what are you spending in advertising and what are you making? I don't care what channel it's on. I don't care if Amazon's 10% and Walmart's 100, and that math doesn't add up. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't care what it is. I want to look at, what are you spending? What are you making? Those are our targets. Now, I can take a step back, look at different KPIs for individual channels, and start to see where I want to push and pull. But when you talk to a 9-figure business, and they're like massive, they're not sitting here going like, oh, well, here's what my ACOS is for this campaign, and here's this specific keyword. Like, they're so macro at that point that they're realizing like they have a set advertising budget. They're going to spend it where they find it to be most lucrative, but they know that the way that people shop now online is completely fluid, so they're not so reliant on it. So I try to look at just an overall ROI of the business, of your marketing spend versus your overall revenue.
Yeah, and the point that you mentioned as far as what your wife was doing, which was kind of the reverse, where a lot of times people will hear a brand, they find out about it, they may go to that brand's website, and then regardless, because they're just so comfortable with the Amazon ecosystem and the Prime, they'll just go to Prime and look up that product. I mean, I know I do that myself a lot of times just because I don't have to worry about the returns. It's just a lot smoother. Now, on the business's side, how much of a concern should it be for the business owner that has a presence, has their own D2C presence, selling on Amazon? Is it ever a concern that the business could be kind of, I guess I want to say, competing against themselves, as far as, obviously they want to control the customer, and they can do that more effectively as far as the customer's information, the whole life cycle, the money that they have to spend to get the product out. It's a lot easier to do that with the direct-to-consumer sale. So is it a concern if they're kind of growing simultaneously, the Amazon presence, as well as the, as well as their presence on their own site?
Kind of like I said before, every business and every owner specifically is very different. So it always kind of comes down to their philosophy on their own brand. One of the things I started to do when I realized people were coming to a D2C site and then they were going to Amazon directly, is we would actually just build our own button, just CTA, that would say like available on Amazon or whatever, and it would take someone directly to the listing. And the reason we did that was because I knew, based on tests we would do, we're like, hey, let's increase Facebook advertising spend by 10%. And yet, when I would look at the website, I'd be like, wow, we didn't increase revenue by 10%. But if I include Amazon and I didn't increase the budget there, collectively, we did increase 10%. So I can tell from off Amazon ad spend that all of a sudden it's getting a bleed over. And I was like, okay, the problem with that is if people are going directly to Amazon, they don't know how to get straight to our product. Obviously, they can search for it, but if they're all of a sudden bombarded with every competitor. So I want to send them straight to the listing to at least minimize it. I know the sponsor display that's still there, but at least minimize that kind of friction and the extra clicks. So we started just developing this button. And one of the things I realized, like, okay, now that we have this button, the thing that I can do is I can put a pixel on that button and I can retarget anyone that has clicked that button, because now I have them pixeled. I have them in an audience, whether it's through Facebook or Google or whatever we're doing. So I would actually find ways to be like, okay, now how do I market them to come back to the site? So I would actually change my remarketing stuff, and I would change it towards like, okay, let's give them some kind of offer to come back to the site, or let's do something along those lines, and still using Amazon as an acquisition channel. The thing I always think about is if you take a page out of Amazon's book, which is basically just doing whatever is best for the customer. If you think like years and years of this, we still have sellers that are like, Amazon's not answering any of my tickets. Like, they don't really care. There's like, they're just taking my money and blah, blah, blah. But if you're a customer and you have a complaint, you hear from them real fast. And it's because that's where they put most of their resources. And so I realized, like, all right, well, if we just take a page out of Amazon's book and we let people just shop wherever they're most comfortable, will I actually start to see an improvement? Yes, Amazon's got commission. Yes, that becomes a problem. Now, that's changed, by the way, because you've got you have your brand referral bonus, so you get a 10% commission for sending traffic to Amazon anyway if you use the attribution. So you're already getting 10% back there. Now we became we're one of like a handful of Amazon Buy with Prime partners. So we started implementing Buy with Prime, which is as of right now, is a 3% FBA fee as opposed to 15 or 20 or whatever it is. So by driving traffic to Amazon, Amazon's caught on to this and they're like, okay, let me reduce some of our fees because you're helping us bring traffic. But I started to realize that because you have such a high conversion rate on Amazon, because as soon as someone gets there, if it's available in 2 days, they convert so much faster than anyone else, because that's what Amazon is for, right? So I realized, like, okay, yes, I am sending that traffic to Amazon, but that conversion rate is so much higher. So if I send 10 people to my website and 2 of them actually convert, I'm sorry, let me take it back. If I send 100 people to my website and 2 actually convert, that's your standard e-commerce conversion rate, right? Like a 2%, maybe you got a 3, some get up to a 4, but that's usually about it. You send them to Amazon, it's like 20 something. So even though my commission's high, my cost is higher because they're taking away that profitability, I'm getting so many more sales. So like net, it's really not, it's kind of a wash. So that's why like we experiment with it. I never say like this works for everyone. Like this is one of those things, like put the button on your site, A/B test it, run some numbers, decide if it's worth it. Don't just be like, yeah, that makes sense, and then just do it forever. Test everything and anything.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That conversion rate, I mean, you can't beat it. I think a lot of businesses are a little leery from what you said initially, because when they go there, there could be friction because, the customer is exposed to, the whole world of products when they come there, not just your product. And, when they start looking, I mean, you know how it goes when you're starting to you get to Amazon and then you see the other products that are related to it. The other recommended products, you can, tend to get bounced around a little bit. And that's what I think a lot of the businesses see, the friction there. But it's just that conversion rate, I think, does speak to how still effective it is, even if you've got the higher cost, selling it on that platform. Yeah,
exactly. And like, to be honest, like there's definitely D2C size, like good sized D2C businesses that get really big, that have the brand awareness, people know the brand. They go to they go to their website, they purchase. At that point, may not be necessary. Maybe the buy with Prime thing if you can't fulfill fast enough, but outside of that, not entirely necessary. It's when you're a good size Amazon seller and you want to start to diversify because of how ridiculous some of the cost per clicks are, and then obviously you have your FBA fees and all this fun stuff. Like when you start to diversify and you start to build a true e-commerce business, doing this approach where you're kind of like half on Amazon, half on your website, and you're like kind of have this nice little middle ground is so much more beneficial because you're not forgetting about your Amazon business. You know that that's where I made my money. I'm going to keep feeding it. And then eventually I'll A/B test getting rid of these buttons or not sending traffic in that direction.
Exactly. Now, as we get ready to wrap things up, Andrew, I wanted to see if you could share some general success stories of either businesses that you've worked with that have thrived on the different marketplaces, or just businesses that you've worked with directly in your firm.
Yeah. We're a little bit all over the place. I mean, we've got a lot of sellers that are pretty much on the Amazon Shopify side. We've got some on BigCommerce. We've got someone that are just on Walmart, stuff like that. But most of them on the Shopify side. And I know we actually just did a case study of this one guy. We actually did a whole rebrand. He needed a new name and a new website and all this fun stuff for different reasons. But built that out, started off with an available on Amazon button on his site just so we can track, okay, what are we getting? The problem with that button specifically for him was that he has such a large product line that the Amazon attribution only tracks up to 1,000 products, and you can't track the rest of them. There's some brand halo, but he's got different brands, so it doesn't work that way. So we couldn't do it. And so we're like, okay, we're able to track how many people are clicking on the buttons, but we're not able to track who's actually converting, which is a nightmare. Luckily, Amazon Buy with Prime got involved, and we were able to actually start to implement that. And just by implementing that kind of stuff alone and adjusting some of his testing, or testing everything that we were doing and seeing how, which way we wanted to send traffic, we've been able to severely increase the conversion rate on his website just by having that as an offer. So by having the Buy with Prime button and his typical buy now button, he's well over a 5% conversion rate, which is not a thing for most D2C sites. And he's traditional. It's apparel. It's nothing like crazy where they get a ton of traffic anyway. And with them, we're overseeing all that. We are their marketing department pretty much. We're doing their SEO and their social and their email marketing and paid ads, all that fun stuff. And as soon as we were able to put that kind of stuff into place, immediate return on almost every single channel that we had in place. SEO started doing better because we were getting more engagement on the site. Paid ads obviously started doing better. His email marketing started doing better because the Buy with Prime, you get to keep all of the information. You get the name and the email and the address and all that fun stuff. So we've started to build a list of everyone who shops with Amazon. And so now the thing that we're doing with him is when he does a product launch, we send everyone straight to Amazon for who purchased through Buy with Prime because we know that they're on Amazon. So it's how we're trying to figure out which of his audience is on Amazon, which one isn't. So that's definitely been one of the this works for you.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it sounds like the key there is testing, testing, analyzing, and figuring out, really what's going to work, because you can't, there's really just kind of no blanket method that's going to work just for all e-commerce businesses, when it comes to this and trying these different platforms.
Yep.
Well, great, Andrew. Well, this has been awesome talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on today. I've learned a lot. I know our listeners and viewers have as well. But lastly, before we do let you go, I always like to close things out just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. If you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Ooh, fun fact about myself. I wish I was more interesting. I was a traveling touring drummer for a long time. During when I had my first agency in college, I did e-commerce because I never got out of that, but I still did a little bit of retail, mainly because I was on the hospitality side because I did so much music promotion. So I got involved in music marketing, which I will never do again because that whole area is a nightmare. But yeah, that was it. That was a good time. We did the whole playing festivals and all that fun stuff, and that was my. I'll be in my well into my I'll be an old man just still talking.
Yeah,
about how
I could
awesome
imagine. So you were with a band that just traveled and did shows and festivals and the whole nine. Okay.
Yep. sitting in a van with 6 other guys for weeks on end. Super fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure those were some fun times. Do you still play the drums today?
Yeah. Yeah, I still play, but now it's just to annoy my neighbors.
Gotcha. I can imagine. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that, Andrew. I really appreciate that. Lastly, before we do let you go, what do you think, what would be the best way for our listeners to contact you if they want to reach out to you and pick your brain any more about omnichannel marketing?
Oh, man, pick a place. Any social media channel, either at BlueTuskr with no E in Tusker, or my name, Andrew Maff. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, tweet at me. I don't really care.
All right, well, that's awesome. We'll definitely encourage people to reach out to you. We'll have the link to the BlueTuskr website in the show notes so people can connect with you that way and see how you guys can help them out, with everything that they're doing. And thanks again, Andrew, for joining us today on the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Arlen.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the E-Commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of weeding through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.